Vinyl Collection Part 53. It has been roughly around almost half a year, a little over 4 months, since my last inclusion into my vinyl collection series, mainly because I've been just so sidetracked with doing other forms of videos, mainly to do with topics, that honestly I had more interest in doing those videos. But regardless, I want to keep up with this series as it's been a part of my channel now for a little over 3 years and counting, and I just wanted to do this because I am really behind, as some of the records I'm going to be talking about in this particular part I've had now for over 3 years, and I'm just going to talk about them now just to showcase how far behind I am. But other than that, what's going to be playing in the background is going to be the self-titled full-length album from Deltron 3030, which I've been finding myself listening to this album quite a bit, as I know it's kind of a bit old. It was released in the year 2000, and I listened to it quite a bit on my commute to work, which my work commute is roughly like 90 minutes there and 90 minutes back, so 3 hours of just driving. I have quite a big playlist to listen to. And what this is it's considered to be like this experimental hip-hop album, but the standout features about it to me personally are the themes of it having like this depiction of like this really gritty cyber futuristic dystopia that's being portrayed. And I believe the MC's name is Deltron Zero, and his verses are just so killer and have like a strong essence of funk to them that it's really infectious. The percussions are really punchy, and I feel like to an extent metal fans might enjoy this album just again for the punchy beats, and the rhythm flows by Deltron Zero are honestly really well done. And yeah, just overall I've been listening to this album quite a bit as of recently. Kicking this vinyl collection part off is going to be the third full-length album by Dairi Volante, which I'm going to butcher, but I'm going to try my best. That being Les Blessures de l'Ombre. God, I apologize to anyone who speaks French for butchering your beautiful language. You have every right until the end of my days to make fun of me for that. But Dairi Volante, just good God, I've been obsessed over this project since I discovered it earlier this year, like maybe back in February or January, and I just cannot seem to stop listening to this dude's work over and over again. Like literally on a daily basis, I've been listening to Dairi Volante. That if for some way you could see my playlist of all the albums I've listened to this year, at least 3/4 of it would just be Dairi Volante. Like, it's disgusting how hard I'm obsessing over it. But god damn, this dude's work is truly one of a kind, and I try not to say that because I just don't know who to compare him to. Because I notice when it comes to like a synopsis of Dairi Volante, it's usually characterized as post-industrial, but that really doesn't give it justice to what you're hearing here, as there's elements of martial industrial, neoclassical, neo-folk. I've even seen it be described as pop martial industrial, and even, believe it or not, pop military music. Like, it's really hard to define Dairi Volante under one category. But if I had to summarize it to the best of my ability, I really can't say it's just one genre. Because when it comes to his vocal performance, it sounds like he's singing under like a post-punk band, but the percussions sound like as if he's in a marching band, and the composition, how everything's played out, sounds like he's trying to create some like neoclassical industrial project, but the experimental parts sound like he's trying to create martial industrial. Like, there's so much happening, but it's all cohesive and fluid. It's just really a one-of-a-kind project. And this dude, I'd love to know what his influences were, because it's remarkable to say the least. And I feel like in terms of everything he's done in his catalog, if you want the best written in terms of composition, this is the best place to start. I honestly consider this a masterpiece, just how hard I've been obsessing over it. And I know I'm getting really nerdy, but god, I really don't know who to compare Dairi Volante to. So definitely check this out if you want something different and unique for your playlist. As for the layout and packaging with this full length, it's quite difficult to get. I waited quite a while to find a copy on Discogs, but if you're lucky, maybe you'll find a copy out there. I know CDs are available at Tesco, and that's as far as I know in terms of how to score it. But as for the layout, you have album artwork, backside with the track listings. Comes on a gatefold with the lyrics inside, and this over here is a 7-inch with bonus material, which I really don't want to get out because it's really difficult to put back in. And this vinyl press comes on white LP. I also have the follow-up full-length by Dairi Volante, that being titled Devant le Moi, which, again, to anyone who speaks French, I apologize in advance for the butchery of your language, but this full-length right here, this is the one that when I'm in the mood for Dairi Volante, like half the time I'm going right to this album, because I think just in terms of songwriting, not just composition, but everything else, he truly outdid himself with this album, that this is my personal favorite. That the previous album I just showed I would consider a 10, but this is an 11 out of 10. Holy hell, man. It's like, it's come to a point now where I really feel like I need to, not so much I want to, I need to buy an extra copy, because I've spun this literally too many times. It's disgusting. And I would tell you the song titles, but they're all in French. Just know that the second song on this album is just a fucking banger. Like, the emotions I'm hearing from Dairi Volante, especially around like the mid-2000s of his catalog, it's a mixture of like, again, all the genres I just said from the previous album, but the emotions are like melancholy and pride going like back and forth, and it just really makes for some captivating music. Like, god damn, this dude was just like on a whole other high with this full-length album, that if I were to ever redo my all-time favorite albums list of just every music genre, this is easily cracked into the top 25. It's just, for me, it's just, I cannot get sick of this album, no matter how much I try. And I'm pretty sure everything that I'm talking about from Dairi Volante you can get at Tesco organization, so go to that label if you want to score a copy. But for me personally, if you want to start out with his best material, start with this full-length album. That's all I gotta say. As for the layout and packaging with this, you have album artwork, backside with the track listings. Comes on a printed inner sleeve, one side with lyrics, other side with the mastermind himself of this project, and it's just on standard black vinyl. Continuing on with even more Dairi Volante. This is a compilation of all of his demos and I believe splits that he's done of all that material, compiled into this compilation that he all remastered, titled, again, hopefully I say this somewhat correctly, Nite Return Pas, which I'm pretty sure in English translates to Do Not Turn Around, if I'm not mistaken. And as I stated, it's a compilation of all this material, of demos and splits, that I've noticed roughly around the time period of the early to mid-2000s is the cream of the crop of this dude's work, because he was really experimenting and pushing himself, where later on in his catalog, which I only have one of his full lengths, but I mean meaning to get the rest on LP, so there's quite a handful of records of his I'm missing, but he goes more in the direction of like synth pop, like gothic dark wave territory, which is still really good. But the early to mid 2000s, he was really pushing himself with like the post-industrial aspect. And it's cool that it's all compiled into this compilation, which again, you can get at Tesco organization. But yeah, everything sounds stellar, the music is incredible, and it's just another great addition into my collection. And again, for anyone who wants to explore more Dairi Volante, this is another phenomenal place to start. As for the layout and packaging with this, you have album artwork, backside with the track listings, comes on a printed inner sleeve again, one side with lyrics, other side with a picture of the mastermind himself. And this vinyl press is the limited edition on clear LP. And the last thing I have by Dairi Volante is the latest full-length album titled Crystal. Ooh, I said one of the albums correctly. Apologies for the glare, I never realized just how glossy the jacket is on this record. But as I stated, this is the latest full-length by Dairi Volante, that unlike everything he did in the early years, especially in the early 2000s and mid-2000s that were like post-industrial with a lot of experimentation, this is more in the vein of like synth pop and dark wave music. That is something you would honestly hear if you were to go to like a gothic nightclub. This sounds like is what he's trying to appeal to. And while this is nowhere near my favorite material of his, I gotta admit, after all this time, all of his experimentations and ambitions that he's done, I give it up to him that he's still able to find stability with his songwriting and still create really well done music, because the composition and overall performance is still stellar by this dude. But again, if you want to get this, go to Tesco organization to score a copy, as they just recently pressed this only about a few months ago, and I know they're stacked to the brim with LPs there. As for the layout and packaging with this, you have a very glossy jacket with the album artwork, backside with the track listings. This comes on a printed inner sleeve just like the previous two, with lyrics on one side and a picture of the mastermind himself on the other. And this LP press is the limited edition that is on swamp green vinyl. The next couple of records are all by one band that I've talked about numerous times here on my channel, that I've had these records now for 3 years and I'm finally talking about them in this particular video, and that would be Diapsiquir with their debut full-length album, LSD. These guys were, I'm not sure if they're still even active anymore, but they were a French industrial black metal band, but this is really their only album that I would really classify them as a black metal band, because everything past this, they really start to diminish their black metal influence in favor of more experimentation, more industrial usage, and really trying to distance themselves from the aesthetic of black metal. Where this album right here is their most unapologetic black metal album. I'm pretty sure the themes have something to do with like this internet cybergenetic Satanism is what they were trying to create, and it sounds like it's more similar to that of something like Thorns, Mysticum, or to Heimskar is what this reminds me of quite a bit. There's a lot more harsh vocals, a lot more blast beats, everything's just more aggressive. So if you're trying to get into Diapsiquir and you're like just a straight up black metal fan, honestly this might be the only album of theirs worth checking out. But if you want more experimentation, check out everything after this. Regardless, I wanted to have it for the collector scum in me. Plus, overall it's a really good album if you're into more of like what black metal was doing around like the late 90s and early 2000s, with really having a fascination more rooted in industrial music. Really killer stuff. But I scored this on Discogs a few years back, and I really can't tell you for sure if there are still copies available there, but I got mine for roughly a relatively good price. But as for the layout and packaging with this, it's kind of damaged as it's seen some wear and tear, but it's only got this one LP press, I think, and it's never got repressed, but see a little bit of ring wear around the edges. But the layout and packaging, you have album artwork, backside with the track listings, comes on a gatefold with just a bunch of lovely photography, and it's just double LP plain black vinyl. And I have their follow-up full length, that being once again Diapsiquir with Virus STN. So this is now where industrial and a lot more experimentation is really starting to become the meat and potatoes of what you're hearing. It's like, the best way to describe it is LSD, the previous album, was like 80% black metal, 20% industrial. Now it's balanced kind of like 50-50 with those two influences. And you can see now they're really trying to not really find fascination with the aesthetic of black metal. And some of the interviews I read that Damien, the mastermind behind this project, was he was really getting sick and tired of like the fictional aspect of black metal. He wanted something real and gritty, and he felt like having things to do with street life of France and this urban decay type of theme he was trying to portray. It felt like as if now black metal was becoming real to him with this full length. And that's why now it's so dramatically different from LSD. But yeah, I would say for anyone who wants more of this ambitious and experimental take on black metal that you really don't find here, because I really can't think of that many black metal bands or any extreme metal bands that go down this route where they want to do stuff to do with urban decay in a really like realistic, gritty, dirty way. Diapsiquir really did something quite unique, to say the least, and really happy I scored a copy of this, as again, I got this on Discogs a few years back, and I really can't tell you if there's any other places that have copies, so check Discogs is my best bet. But as for the layout and packaging with this album, as you can tell just from the album artwork, they tried to be a bit more realistic now with actual photography of like this urban decay France here. So you have album artwork, backside with the track listings, and once again comes on a gatefold with band photos inside, and again is just double LP plain black vinyl. And lastly for Diapsiquir is their latest and supposedly last full-length album from 2016, 180 Degrees. From my knowledge, this is the only album of theirs that's accessible to buy on LP, as I got my copy through the label that the guys from Disembowelment run. I'm pretty sure it's Norma Evangelion Diaboli is where I scored my copy, so go there if you actually want to get something by Diapsiquir. But this right here, God, how do I describe 180 Degrees? This now is Diapsiquir has abandoned really anything to do with metal. Like, there are elements scattered throughout, but it's not really a metal album. And there's elements of post-punk, but it's not really a post-punk album. There's a lot of experimentation to do with like electronic music, and there's a lot of forms of chanson, which I'm pretty sure is a kind of like distinct singing method from France. So yeah, it's quite the rabbit hole to go down in terms of trying to understand the songwriting and overall meaning behind this album. But from what I understand with 180 Degrees, it's kind of like a self-reflection that Damien does on this album in terms of like this redemption arc that he wanted to do since he started going to church to find some form of enlightenment. And I don't know if it's just trying to rehabilitate himself or trying to explore other ways of thinking. It's just a really weird, trippy album, and I wouldn't expect anything less from what is considered to be the final Diapsiquir album. So interesting stuff, but I really can't say everyone watching this will enjoy it because, again, it's weird. And that's all I gotta say. As for the layout and packaging with this, you have album artwork, backside of the other member of Diapsiquir. Comes on a gatefold, double LP that come on printed inner sleeves, side 1 with lyrics, side 2 with more additional artwork. Then you got printed inner sheet number 2 with more lyrics, other side with more additional artwork, again with those themes of rural decay, and both are just on double LP plain black vinyl. Next up is Discharge with their 1981 EP, Why. There is a lot I want to get by Discharge, and I've just been waiting to find copies of their albums at record stores because, I mean, it's Discharge. It's the pioneers and grandfathers to that of crust punk. I really don't feel like it should be that difficult to find their music in public. And been going to Armageddon, the record shop in Boston and Providence, Rhode Island every once so often, hoping they would have material of theirs, and it took a long time, but finally found something by Discharge. I just figure, I guess, when they get material by them, it sells really quickly. But yeah, not really much to say here, as it's straight to the point, aggressive crust punk music. That one thing I just want to state with Discharge that I find really interesting when it comes to the kind of like build up to that of what we consider to be like 80s extreme metal is that so much of it in terms of black metal and death metal and even to a few thrash metal bands out there were all taking influence off of Discharge. So we really got to give credit to Discharge for really kind of like getting the ball rolling for just extreme music as a whole to progress on to all these other genres that we just, you know, cherish to this day. Discharge is a big innovator that I really don't feel like gets the credit that they rightfully deserve, other than when the conversations brought up about crust punk they do. But a lot of extreme metal acts take big inspiration from these guys back in the 80s. But yeah, as of right now, this is the only record of theirs I have, and I definitely want to get more by Discharge. As for the layout and packaging with this, pretty bare bones. You just got album artwork, backside with the track listings and lyrics, and just comes on a single LP plain black vinyl. Proceeding on to an album that every fan that's into Death Doom should know. That of course being Disembowelment with their one sole full-length album, Transcendence into the Peripheral. Really boundary-pushing stuff for the time when it was released in 1993. And I think a huge reason as to why so many people cherish it to this day is it's still groundbreaking for today's standards. See, Disembowelment, yes, plays in the style of Death Doom. That's what you're going to hear. But all the experimentation, compositions, and atmosphere they were playing around with took a lot of inspiration from artists and groups that weren't playing in the style of any form of extreme metal. As I'm pretty sure in the thank you notes, they were taking credit to that of like Enya and Cocteau Twins and so many other artists that were playing around, again, with more ambience and classical music, that I think that's as to why Disembowelment is looked as these big pioneers for Death Doom. And it's a bummer that this is the only thing they ever did, but I am aware of the fact that the members of Disembowelment, I think a handful of them, started a new project called Inverloch, I think, which obviously built upon what they were doing with Disembowelment, which I definitely need to check out because I've always been pushing that project off. But I know Relapse has copies of Inverloch, and just recently Relapse did a repress of this about a month ago and had to get this because previous presses of this go for a huge inflated price. So cool to see Relapse keeping this in stock, and I've been able to getting it on like a retail reasonable price. So go to Relapse if you want to score a copy of what is considered to be an essential and a must listen for anyone who's into Death Doom. And I think that's a huge reason as to why I find myself not really listening to that much Death Doom for the time being, is so many other Death Doom bands take influence from other death metal or other doom metal bands and not really expanding upon it, but they're playing it consistently. I gotta give them credit for that. But as I stated, Disembowelment truly pushed the boundaries for the time, and even for today's standards, it's still very groundbreaking stuff. So yeah, as I stated, go to Relapse if you want to score a copy of this. As for the layout and packaging, here you have album artwork, spot gloss with some of the lyrics on it. Backside with the track listings comes on a gatefold with band photo and lyrics inside. And this final press comes on red black marble, limited I believe to roughly around like 1,500 copies. Then I got a handful of months ago, Dolly Parton, Jolene. Come on, this is an essential country album. Dolly Parton is a national treasure, and I know I'm just preaching to the choir there with just obvious facts. But songs in here like the title track Jolene, I Will Always Love You, River of Happiness, Early Morning Breeze, Living on Memories of You. It is such a well-written album. Dolly's voice is just infectious as it can get. And I feel like for anyone who's trying to get into country, which you don't need me to say this, Dolly Parton is a must. Plus, my wife, who was born and raised in Tennessee, loves hearing this, and hopefully one day when we visit her family out in Tennessee, we can go to Dolly World, I'm pretty sure it is, where it has like all memorabilia and shit from Dolly Parton, which is pretty cool. But for the time being, I got like the entry-level record of hers, and I need to get more by Dolly Parton. But again, just preaching to the choir of just easy listenings and essentials for country music. As for the layout and packaging with this, really bare bones. You just got album artwork of Dolly Parton herself, backside with the track listings, advertisements for all her other records, and just comes on a single LP, plain black vinyl. Up next is Dungeon Serpent with their 2021, I believe, full-length, debut full-length album, World of Sorrows. An album I absolutely gushed over when I heard it, as it's really similar to that of like Argus Lint riffs meets like the composition and atmosphere of Immolation. It's often compared to that of My Gauss. And from what I heard, they take obvious influence from bands like Rotting Christ and Intestine Balsam, which is a massive plus, because if you can remind me of the rest of Intestine Balsam, you immediately won me over, and that's what this project did, essentially. I know now they're kind of like a band, because he's doing live shows with Dungeon Serpent. And from what I understand, from what I've heard from other people that know of the guy, the next full-length album, he's not going to go in this direction. He's really going to put more interest and influence to that on the keyboards, like he kind of did on the outro track, World of Sorrows. Regardless, I'm really curious to know what he'll do. But if it sounds anything like this in any way, shape, or form with this approach with melodic death metal, I don't fucking care. This shit is awesome, and we need more stuff in melodic death metal to sound like this. I'll be all over it like white on rice. But songs in here like Necroscope and Immortal Incubation, come on, man. I don't know how the fuck people think this shit is overrated. It's good, excellent, destructive melodic death metal that nothing in the year 2021, especially the big boys of melodic death metal like At the Gates and Carcass, come even close to the destructive force of this bad boy right here. And if you want to score copies, I'm pretty sure Nameless Grave Records still carries copies, and I'm pretty sure he even did a repress for it. So go to Nameless Grave Records if you want to score this banger right here. As for the layout and packaging with this, you have album artwork, backside with more additional artwork and track listings in the upper corner. Comes with an insert sheet, one side with credits and thank you, other side with artwork and lyrics. And this vinyl press comes on Ruby Red, limited to 100 copies. Coming near the end of this vinyl collection part, up next is the latest Dying Fetus that was from this year, Make Them Beg for Death. So I've been a fan of Dying Fetus since I was like a sophomore in high school. They were one of the first ever death metal bands I discovered on my own, and they were a gateway for me for sure when it came to extreme metal. And their mixture of like brutal technical death metal and how they blend it with hardcore riffs has always won me over. And I think there's a bit of nostalgia I have as to why I always keep up with the Dying Fetus releases. And I state this because really this album is nothing different from what they've done for the past 15 years. So if you're not a fan of Dying Fetus, this album will not change your mind. It's still the same run-of-the-mill sound that they've worked for the past 20 plus years and going. I know they've been active actually now for a little over 30 years, but ever since the turn of the millennia, they've been really putting more emphasis on the brutal technical aspect with all the sweeps that they do and the hardcore elements blended together. And it's just really worked for me in my ears. But the one thing I will say about Dying Fetus is they really suck at when it comes to visuals for album artwork and album titles, because I'm sorry, the album artwork is pretty mid. It's just overly dark and overly edgy. And the name, Make Them Beg for Death, like I get it, it's Dying Fetus and their name is really like up front and like, you know, pretty obnoxiously edgy, but I think these guys can do a bit better with an album title like that. It's just, I don't know, it just feels like this, the aesthetic for the visuals was just done by like a 16-year-old, but I know I'm getting way off track here. Overall, the music appeals to me ever since I was in high school, and it's a bit of nostalgia that wins me over with these guys. But songs on here like Feast of Ashes, Compulsion for Cruelty, and Raised in Victory, Raised in Defeat, pretty solid stuff of theirs, and just overall clicks with me. And if you want to score copies, pretty sure Relapse, where I got my copy, you can still get it there. As for the layout and packaging with this, you have album artwork, backside with the band logo and track listings. This includes 2 stickers of the album artwork and band logo, along with an inner sheet, one side with lyrics, other side with more additional artwork. And this vinyl press comes on yellow clear split with like black purple splatter. believe it's limited edition, and it's limited to roughly around 227 copies, if I'm not mistaken, probably off there, but yeah, pretty sure the standard editions are still available. Continuing on to a project that I've been wanting to get stuff of theirs for a while, and I know they're one of the big pioneers for industrial music. And I just want to state before I state their name, I apologize in advance if I butcher this, so hopefully you understand. But this is Einstürzende Neubauten. Hopefully I didn't say extra syllables or I need to add syllables there. With their 1981 full-length album, which I'm pretty sure it's 81, Collapse. So I got this actually in Iceland on my honeymoon in Reykjavik. We stopped by like every record store we could. And Lord and behold, they had an Einstürzende Neubauten record there, which, again, apologies for if I butchered that. And what's interesting about like early old school industrial music is a lot of people point towards Throbbing Gristle to be like the big pioneers in the first real industrial project. And when it comes to like early 80s industrial music, all the innovators that created it and influenced it or whatever, it's weird that none of them really claim to be industrial. Like Einstürzende Neubauten, which I'm pretty sure is in German, when you translate it to English, is collapsing new buildings, which already sounds kind of industrial in terms of the aesthetic. They have never claimed to be industrial, and every time it's brought up in interviews, they denounce that term for their music, which is kind of odd. But this particular album, I think, in terms of trying to get into their music, is the best place to start. And again, really big and influential in terms of what industrial music was going to become years and even decades later. But I know they've done a lot of work in their catalog, and there's a lot more like experimental and weird stuff that they've done. But as I stated, it's the best place to start with Collapse, and it's honestly, as weird as this sounds, their most normal sounding. But yeah, really good stuff. It's a bit easier to follow along with. The vocals have a strong kind of like German accent, but you kind of get lost in the kind of wild experimentation that they do, and it's eerie but really interesting at the same time. And again, as I stated, if you want to get into industrial, especially old school stuff that's like essential for it, check this out. As for the layout and packaging with this, you have album artwork, backside with a band photo with all the instrumentation that they used on this album. And if I'm not mistaken, since this is a reissue, this is a band photo of these guys in the 2002 Belgium Olympics, if I'm not mistaken, which is pretty cool that they did on the represses. This also includes a big-ass booklet with just like, you know, notes about the songs. I'm pretty sure some of the lyrics for each track, which is really cool, with some photography of the band, and just comes on a single LP plain black vinyl. Second to last is going to be the latest full-length album by Elsiane. This is their 2023 self-titled full-length album that I have been waiting so long for these guys to release new material, as the last time they did anything I think was almost like 5 years ago. And I've been keeping up with these guys, and they've gone through hell and high water to get this album out, as they tried to record this album during 2020, and that's when COVID hit, which delayed all of their recording for it. Then I think a year or two later, their producer that they've worked with since day one passed away, sadly, which gave them another obstacle to get over. But they've gone through hell and high water, and they finally got the latest Elsiane album. And what these guys play in the style of is it's a two-piece kind of like experimental trip-hop group, I believe from Canada if I'm not mistaken. And since it's in the style of trip-hop, I know this is kind of cliche to compare them to, but it reminds me a bit of like Massive Attack in terms of the instrumentation, which if you don't know Massive Attack and you're a trip-hop fan, that's like saying you're into doom metal but you don't know who Black Sabbath are. But the difference between Elsiane and Massive Attack is this is just way more lush sounding. And the reason for that is the vocalist, I don't know her name, but her voice is just so surreal and truly serene that it doesn't even sound real. It's really one of a kind sounding. There's no kind of like enhancements. It's all legit and organic. And I feel like just from the vocal performance alone, it might hook some of you guys onto it. So if you want like really lush and serene sounding trip hop, this right here, Elsiane, and everything else they've done, I would highly recommend. And honestly, this is one of the better albums that I've heard of this year. So if I do an Albums of the Year list for 2023, expect this to be on it. But as to where you can get this, I'm pretty sure I got it off of their Bandcamp. It's limited to, I think, either 200 or 300 copies, so I'm hoping there are still vinyl copies available, so go to their Bandcamp if you want to score a copy. As for the layout and packaging with this, you have album artwork, backside with the track listings. Comes on a standard plain black vinyl, but they also included a postcard with the two members of the group, and they both signed it, which is pretty neat. But yeah, definitely check out Elsiane if you want some really lush and serene trip hop. And the final record for this vinyl collection part is a repress of an album that I've been wanting for years, and finally Relapse did this album justice. That being Exhumed with their debut full-length album, Gore Metal. This album just fucking rips from start to finish. This is Exhumed at their most unapologetic with going towards gore grind and death grind that takes just such obvious influence from like early Carcass albums, and just it is so grotesque, it's violent, it's vicious, it's just such a killer death grind album. Songs on here like Open the Abyss, Limb from Limb, which is a fan favorite song, Casket Crusher, which is my personal favorite track, Blazing Corpse, Deadest of the Dead. This album is just such a blast, and I love every second of it. And again, as I stated, I've been wanting this on vinyl for the longest time. And I know what they tried doing back in 2015 is they did like this remaster of this album. What was it? Like Exhume's like Gore Metal Necrospective or something like that. It was a weird title. And I am a big Exhumed fan. Again, just like Dying Fetus, they're one of the gateway bands, and I love, honestly, almost everything that they've done. But that remaster album fucking sucked. It was so bad. It lacked all the charm, all the grit, all the violent nature that made this album just so fucking good. So again, finally and thankfully, Gore Metal, the real legit one, not the necrospective one, is on LP again, and you need to get this if you are a fan of death grind. An absolute essential, I feel like. And yeah, as I stated, love every minute of this album. So again, go to Relapse if you want to score a copy of this. As for the layout and packaging with it, you have the iconic album artwork of, I don't know, some dude holding a chainsaw with all just disembodied body parts all over the place. Some spot gloss there on the band logo, album title, and I believe even two on the chainsaw as well, which is pretty neat. Backside with all the track listings. One thing I just noticed, and I don't want to really stretch it that much, I don't know if it will show on camera, but the inside right there of the jacket has like all these guts and muscles right there, which is pretty neat. I don't know, it's little details like that that I really enjoy when labels go the extra mile with the packaging. This also includes a folded inner sheet with just artwork, band photo collage, lyrics inside, thank you notes and credits. Other side, just more additional band photo collages and photography of the band. And this vinyl press comes on a multitude of colors, I guess, with green, red, white splatter. I have no idea what they named this variant. I could give a shit less. But from my understanding, it's the limited edition, I believe limited to roughly around like 100 copies, which is, again, pretty cool to own. And that'll do it for this vinyl collection part. Like always, links provided to everything I talked about will be in the description below, along with what was playing in the background. So like always, guys, make sure you guys drink plenty of water to stay hydrated, and have a great day.